BA Upadhidari, Baralat Ganakarikari.
Development of affordable cost recovery electricity tariff for 2024. So that's the heading that I use. So I'm using two words here. One is affordability. The other one is, if affordability goes this way, other one is cost recovery, it goes this way. So I am going to give you some ideas to the CEB where these two can meet. So one of the things I want to mention is that a percentage tariff increase, personally I don't believe that it's a basis. Tariff has to be calculated and use absolute numbers. Then the outline of the methodology is given below. Affordable tariffs using cross-subsidy from high-income groups to low-income groups should be the basis for tariff development. I am referring to households. There are three types of households. One is low-income groups, middle-income groups, that is they have the low middle and high middle, and then the high-income groups. So I'm telling that the cross-subsidy from the high-income groups earning more than 500,000 rupees per month or maybe 1 million a month, from them to transfer through a cross-subsidy mechanism through the tariff to the low-income families. First step is to calculate the cost. There are about 7 or more types of costs. When you say cost, it is not one type of cost. First one is called O&M cost. So that should be the lowest cost. That will be the lowest cost because you are not taking OH. So that can be applied to the low income groups, just to start the scenario. This is done for water supply. Use it for low income categories. Last scenario is the total cost including OH plus a cross subsidy. This is the final one, which you can apply to the high income groups earning like 1 million a month household income, and they may not even feel it. And use this scenario for high income groups, households and businesses. There are also businesses who are making good profits, and we congratulate them for their hard work. But in the meantime, you kindly recover the cost, and then maybe with the cross subsidies to subsidize the poor. Now, electricity coverage in Sri Lanka is nearly 100%. It is commendable. I repeat, it is commendable. Africa and South Asian countries are nowhere near it. Because I have worked in 20 countries and I have been to 35 countries in the world. So I know particularly the situation in Africa, and also I worked for 10 years in Afghanistan, so I know the electricity connectivity they have, not even 20%. Here we are talking about 100%. So with nearly 100% connectivity comes the affordability problems. By low income families, they have a problem with paying the electricity bill because they have got electricity. Generally in poor countries like Afghanistan, forget it. So even when I was in my 1950s, when I was small, we didn't have electricity because there were no posts for about so many, like a 1 mile, there were no posts. We could have afforded, but there are no posts to get the connectivity. So we have it now. So Ceylon Electricity Board, CEB, has to navigate through troubled waters and make operations viable while protecting poor people. So that's a big challenge that the CEB has. So we have to understand that. Okay, now, so average cost I discussed about it, that there are different types of costs. So the domestic tariff, I'm talking about households, they have below 30 units, some consume, some means like 1.4 million households consume below 30 units. Maybe my figures are not very correct, but it's a big number. And that is actually the Aswasima Samurdhi beneficiaries who are using that with 1 bulb, maybe 2 bulbs. And it's up to them to stay that way if they cannot afford. Then you have 60 to 90 category. They are the low income the lowest of the middle income category or the low. And then you have the 90 to 180, that is the beginning of the high income categories where they can afford. And above 180, dear friends, they are the high income categories, so electricity bill is nothing for them. They may not even pay, the accountant will pay or the company will pay. So make use of the cross subsidy mechanism to subsidize the poor people. CEB billing for a month, domestic households below 30 units consumption per month, 1.4 million households, which I said. Then below 90 units per month, 5 million households, and that covers both the low and the middle income households, where their affordability and ability to pay is a problem for them. Their current tariff is already below cost, that I understand, and it should remain that way, sir, if possible. Types of cost recovery, I discussed about that, O&M cost and all that. And then, as I don't have time, I'm going to skip that. Then, now I am telling that please apply the O&M cost per unit to the low income households. That is those who are consuming less than 30 units. So that is the basis I am talking about, not a percentage. These are basic. And then for 60 to 90 category, apply total cost plus cross subsidy. And then above 90 units, you can even massage it to the cost plus cross subsidy plus, the cross subsidy is equivalent to the profit that the private companies make. So we call it here cross subsidy. Now please have new tariff categories for the following high income households, businesses, and apply the total cost recovery plus cross subsidy scenario for luxury condominiums, apartments. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from one of them, so I am making the request, not on behalf of them, on my behalf. So don't subsidize me, that's what I am telling you. Casinos, 4 to 5 star class hotels, because their rate is like $100 per room or sometimes $300 per room in Colombo. So they can easily pass it on to the customer. Then buildings more than 30 floors, because those are the high-end people, they are high-end businesses, and the electricity tariff is not even considered. Because I know, ladies and gentlemen, that when I was working as an accountant, I never approved the electricity bill. It was done at a lower level because we in fact paid from petty cash because it was so low that time. Okay, no need to subsidize these groups' businesses. So that's my point. I'm talking about very high income categories. Now affordability, let me just tell you there are 3 things called affordability, ability to pay, willingness to pay. Affordability, ADB, Asian Development Bank, says the threshold is 4% of household income can afford to pay for utilities. One is electricity, water, gas, all 3, they can pay up to 4%, and they stop at that. But that's not the right thing, because you have the ability to pay. Household income less than 30,000 rupees per month are at poverty level. They cannot pay as their income is barely sufficient to pay for food, clothing, shelter, children's education. Now willingness to pay is another thing which is subjective. Could improve by awareness programs. High income households could be told that they are subsidizing, this is very important piece, that they are subsidizing poor families and welfare facilities via the tariff. It will give them ownership, and when paying their bills, the above concept should be on the radar during tariff development. This disconnection should be the last resort. Don't start the collection process by disconnections. Red notices are all right, we are just a piece of paper. Defaulters should be allowed to apply for deferment of payment by referring to a CEP, Customer Welfare Committee, to consider on a case-by-case basis. This is there in municipalities. Work with the defaulters and not against them. Work with them, please. Call them for interview. Discuss with them and see whether they have a problem or not. Try to solve their problem and get your bill paid. CEB could make a list of deserving defaulters and apply to the government to settle these outstanding bills of vulnerable households by a government revenue grant. Once the government grant is received, customer accounts have to be credited as settlements as if they have paid. So that the government will consider with whatever they have in the treasury, because that there is a basis there. The CEB Customer Welfare Committee could find sponsors, this is another point, to pay electricity bills of selected low-income families and religious places, government schools, orphanages. The sponsors should not be asked to sign any documents where there can be legal implication. It is strictly voluntary. It should be strictly voluntary, because I do myself, I am paying the electricity bill of a Katana, Nigambo, Kurana school where there are 108 students. It's only about 5,000 rupees a month. So I pay for about like 50,000, like covering 10 months, like, which is easy for. And please don't, the current payment system is very easy. You go with the bill and it goes to the cashier, give the money, that's it. You don't fill any form. So please don't make it bureaucratic. Keep it that way so that you just hand over the money and you get out from there. Right. Now CEB cost, of course, a lot of people spoke about that, reduce overhead expenses, then staff leave, reallocate duties of current staff to avoid replacements, that got discussed here. Avoid wastages and excess payment, this has been done. Get customers to conserve energy by switching off unnecessary lights or pay their bills. Simple as that. Hydropower has the cheapest cost of electricity generation and has a capacity of 40% total electricity generation in the country. Coal is next. Solar and wind power has to be purchased by CEB. Thermal fuel is the most expensive. These sources have different unit costs for electricity. So I am asking whether you can calculate the O&M cost of hydroelectricity, which is very low, I know, maybe as low as 5 rupees, and whether that can be applied to the lowest 30 group. Start with that. So I am suggesting, right. Now, these are requests to the CEB. Please give me 2 more minutes, please. Request CEB for consideration. Water catchment and hydropower generation areas, Victoria, Kothmale, Laksapana, etc., where most vulnerable poor families and tea angels live. Can CEB consider giving a special hydropower tariff for these families in catchment areas? Because they run the risk with the dams and so on. So can you give a special hydropower at maybe 5 rupees or 6 rupees or whatever to those very poor vulnerable families, Kothmale, Laksapana, Victoria and those catchment areas, and maybe the businesses. Once the last 2 points, once the tariff structure is developed, the tariff numbers have to be massaged to make CEB operations viable. You know, you increase it this way, that way, not the poor people, but the rich people, and you massage it, and then you get the tariff, and then you get viability, no loss, no profit, break-even status. Okay, last point. Once affordable tariff structure is developed and implemented, stay with it and avoid tariff revisions. Then we don't have to meet like this. People get used to it with time and they resist change. Let me repeat that. People get used to it with time and they resist change. That's all. Thank you, madam. Thanks.
Mahachara Engineering